Today is the 24th of August, 2010, and we come to the 87th chapter of the Majjhima Nikaya, Piya Jatika Sutta, born from those who are dear. Tonight is also the 36th talk in the series of the Majjhima Nikaya Suttas. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. Now, on that occasion, a certain householder's dear and beloved only son had died. After his son's death, he had no more desire to work or to eat. He kept going to the charnel ground and crying, "My only child, where are you? My only child, where are you?" Then that householder went to the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him, sat down at one side. The Blessed One said to him, "Householder, your faculties are not those of one in control of his own mind. Your faculties are deranged." And he said, "How could my faculties not be deranged, Venerable Sir? For my dear and beloved only son has died. Since he died, I have no more desire to work or to eat. I keep going to the charnel ground and crying, 'My only child, where are you? My only child, where are you?'" And the Buddha said, "So it is, householder, so it is. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are born from those who are dear, arise from those who are dear." And he said, "Venerable Sir, who would ever think that sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are born from those who are dear, arise from those who are dear? Venerable Sir, happiness and joy are born from those who are dear, arise from those who are dear." Then, displeased with the Blessed One's words, disapproving of them, the householder rose from his seat and left. Now on that occasion, some gamblers were playing with dice not far from the Blessed One. Then the householder went to those gamblers and said, "Just now, sirs, I went to the recluse Gotama, and after paying homage to him, I sat down at one side. When I had done so, the recluse Gotama said to me, 'Householder, your faculties are not those of one in control of his own mind. Your faculties are deranged.'" And he repeated the entire conversation with the Buddha. And he said, "Venerable Sir, happiness and joy are born from those who are dear, arise from those who are dear." Then, displeased with the recluse Gotama's words, disapproving of them, I rose from my seat and left. And the gambler said, "So it is, householder, so it is. Happiness and joy are born from those who are dear, arise from those who are dear." Then the householder left thinking, "I agree with the gamblers." Eventually, this story reached the king's palace. Then King Pasenadi of Kosala told Queen Malika, "This is what has been said by the recluse Gotama, Malika. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are born from those who are dear, arise from those who are dear." And Malika said, "If that has been said by the Blessed One, sire, then it is so." And the king said, "No matter what the recluse Gotama says, Malika applauds it thus. If that has been said by the Blessed One, sire, then it is so. Just as a pupil applauds whatever his teacher says to him, saying, 'So it is, teacher, so it is.' So too, Malika, no matter what the recluse Gotama says, you applaud it thus. If that has been said by the Blessed One, sire, then it is so. Be off, Malika, away with you." Let's stop here for a moment. So, worldly people, we always think that those that we love give us the most joy. It's true, but when something happens to them, then it also gives us the most sorrow. That the second part they don't realize. So, when this sutta was spoken, at that time, this King Pasenadi of Kosala, he must have just come to know the Buddha. So he did not have the unshakable faith in the Buddha yet. So he was not happy with the wife. Then Queen Malika addressed the Brahmin, Nali Janga, "Come, Brahmin, go to the Blessed One and pay homage in my name with your head at his feet. and asked whether he is free from illness and affliction, and is healthy, strong, and abiding in comfort, saying, Venerable Sir, Queen Malika pays homage with her head at the Blessed One's feet and asks whether the Blessed One is free from illness, etc. Then say this, Venerable Sir, have these words been uttered by the Blessed One? Sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are born from those who are dear, arise from those who are dear. Learn well what the Blessed One replies and report it to me, for Tathagatas do not speak untruth. Yes, madam, he replied, and he went to the Blessed One and exchanged greetings with him. When this courteous and amiable talk was finished, he sat down at one side and said, Master Gotama, Queen Malika pays homage with her head at Master Gotama's feet and asks whether he is free from illness, etc., and abiding in comfort. And she says this, Venerable Sir, have these words been spoken by the Blessed One? Sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are born from those who are dear, arise from those who are dear. And the Buddha said, so it is, Brahmin, so it is. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are born from those who are dear, arise from those who are dear. It can be understood from this, Brahmin, how sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are born from those who are dear, arise from those who are dear. Once in this same Savatthi, there was a certain woman whose mother died. Owing to her mother's death, she went mad, lost her mind, and wandered from street to street, from crossroad to crossroad, saying, Have you seen my mother? Have you seen my mother? And it can also be understood from this, how sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are born from those who are dear, arise from those who are dear. Once in this same Savatthi, there was a certain woman whose father died, and she also went mad, whose brother died, whose sister died, whose son died, whose daughter died, whose husband died. Owing to their death, she went mad, lost her mind, and wandered from street to street, from crossroad to crossroad, saying, Have you seen my husband, etc.? Have you seen my husband? And it can be understood from this how sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are born from those who are dear, arise from those who are dear. Once in this same Savatthi, there was a certain man whose mother died, whose father died, whose brother died, whose sister died, whose son died, whose daughter died, whose wife died. Owing to their death, those people went mad, lost their mind, and wandered from street to street and from crossroad to crossroad, saying, Have you seen my mother, my father, or my wife, etc.? And it can be understood from this how sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are born from those who are dear, arise from those who are dear. Once in this same Savatthi, there was a certain woman who went to live with her relative's family. Her relatives wanted to divorce her from her husband and give her to another whom she did not want. Then the woman said to her husband, Lord, these relatives of mine want to divorce me from you and give me to another whom I do not want. Then the man cut the woman in two and committed suicide, thinking, We shall be together in the afterlife. It can also be understood from this how sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are born from those who are dear, arise from those who are dear. Then, delighting and rejoicing in the Blessed One's words, the Brahmin Nalijanga rose from his seat, went to Queen Malika, and reported to her his entire conversation with the Blessed One. Then Queen Malika went to King Pasnadi of Kosala and asked him, What do you think, sire? Is Princess Vajiri dear to you? Yes, Malika, Princess Vajiri is dear to me. What do you think, sire? If change and alteration took place in Princess Vajiri, would sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair arise in you? Change and alteration in Princess Vajiri would mean an alteration in my life. How could sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair not arise in me? And Queen Malika said, It was with reference to this, sire, that the Blessed One who knows and sees, Arahant Sammasambuddha, said, Sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are born from those who are dear, arise from those who are dear. What do you think, sire? Is the noble Queen Vasabha dear to you? And he replied similarly, is General Vidudaba dear to you? Am I dear to you? Are Kasi and Kosala dear to you? Yes, Malika, Kasi and Kosala are dear to me. We owe it to Kasi and Kosala that we use Kasi sandalwood and wear garlands, scents and unguents. What do you think, sire? If change and alteration took place in Kasi and Kosala, would sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief and despair arise in you? Change and alteration in Kasi and Kosala would mean an alteration in my life. How could sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief and despair not arise in me? It was with reference to this, sire, that the Blessed One who knows and sees, Arahant Sammasambuddha, said, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief and despair are born from those who are dear, arise from those who are dear. And the king said, it is wonderful, Malika, it is marvelous how far the Blessed One penetrates with wisdom and sees with wisdom. Come, Malika, give me the ablution water. Then King Pasenadi of Kosala rose from his seat and arranging his upper robe on one shoulder, he extended his hands in reverential salutation towards the Blessed One and uttered this exclamation 3 times. Honor to the Blessed One, Arahant Sammasambuddha. In Pali it will be Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. I uttered this 3 times. This ablution water is for washing the hands and feet and mouth before paying homage to the Buddha. So initially King Pasenadi he rebuked the Queen Malika for saying everything that the Buddha says is correct, but after she gave the examples of the daughter Vajiri, if anything happened to her, then the king would feel this sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief and despair. And similarly to other persons who were dear to him, he would also feel it. Then he understood how sorrow and lamentation arise when anything happens to someone whom we love dearly. So clinging, attachment brings about sorrow. Anything that we cling to, we want badly. We want it to remain as it is. But in life, everything is impermanent. You never know what is going to happen. So either you are going to leave those that you love, or those that you love are going to die before you. So when that happens, if you cling to them too much, you will have pain, great pain. In life, if we look around with our eyes, as we grow older, we can see the greatest sorrow arises when somebody that you love dearly passes away. As a monk, I have gone to funerals a few times, and I've seen when they take out the coffin of those that they love, they're going to bring it to the cemetery. At that time, when they take out the coffin from the house, you see how the family members cry. And there's no sorrow, like that type of sorrow, because those that you love for so many years, suddenly they're going to leave you and leave you forever. And it's not like going for a holiday. They're going to disappear altogether from your life. And when that happens, you not only see this they're leaving you, you also realize that your turn will come. One day your turn will come. That life is impermanent, that you also have to die. So since all of us know that death is coming, so if we are wise enough, we prepare for it. To prepare for this, it takes years. You cannot just say you will just let go. It's easy to say let go. When the time comes, it's very difficult to let go. One doctor was telling me, he works in the hospice, an old lady with terminal cancer. She kept saying she's waiting to go, that she's suffering, waiting for her time to go. But actually, when the day came for her to go, and the daughter was around her, she clung to the daughter and cried, saying she didn't want to go. There's one thing to say, you, when the time comes, you will let go. But unless you have trained your mind and meditated, and your mind is strong enough and understood the Dhamma, then when the actual time comes, you certainly cannot let go. The next sutta is number 88, Bahitika Sutta, the Cloak. Thus have I heard, on one occasion the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. Then when it was morning, the Venerable Ananda dressed and taking his bowl and outer robe, went into Savatthi for alms. When he had wandered for alms in Savatthi and had returned from his alms round, after his meal he went to the eastern park, to the palace of Megara's mother for the day's abiding. Now on that occasion, King Pasenadi of Kosala had mounted the elephant Eka Pundarika and was riding out of Savatthi at midday. He saw the Venerable Ananda coming in the distance and asked the minister Sirivada, "That is the Venerable Ananda, is it not?" "Yes, sire, that is the Venerable Ananda." Then King Pasenadi of Kosala told the man, "Come, good man, go to the Venerable Ananda and pay homage in my name with your feet at his feet, saying, 'Venerable Sir, King Pasenadi of Kosala pays homage with his head at the Venerable Ananda's feet.' Then say this, 'Venerable Sir, if the Venerable Ananda has no urgent business, perhaps the Venerable Ananda would wait a moment out of compassion.' 'Yes, sire,' the man replied, and he went to the Venerable Ananda, and after paying homage to him, he stood at one side and said to the Venerable Ananda, 'Venerable Sir, King Pasenadi of Kosala pays homage with his head at the Venerable Ananda's feet, and he says this, "Venerable Sir, if the Venerable Ananda has no urgent business, perhaps the Venerable Ananda would wait a moment out of compassion." The Venerable Ananda consented in silence. Then King Pasenadi went by elephant as far as the elephant could go, and then he dismounted and went to the Venerable Ananda on foot. After paying homage to him, he stood at one side and said to the Venerable Ananda, "If, Venerable Sir, the Venerable Ananda has no urgent business, it would be good if he would go to the bank of the river Achiravati out of compassion." The Venerable Ananda consented in silence. He went to the bank of the river Achiravati and sat down at the root of a tree on a seat made ready. Then King Pasenadi went by elephant as far as the elephant could go, and then he dismounted and went to the Venerable Ananda on foot. After paying homage to him, he stood at one side and said to the Venerable Ananda, "Here, Venerable Sir, is an elephant rug. Let the Venerable Ananda be seated on it." "There is no need, great king. Sit down. I am sitting on my own mat." Stop here for a moment. So you see, monks, the Buddha's disciples, they are contented. They have a sitting mat already. They think there's no need for a luxurious mat from the king. King Pasenadi of Kosala sat down on a seat made ready and said, "Venerable Ananda, would the Blessed One behave with the body in such a way that he could be censured by wise recluses and Brahmins?" "No, great king, the Blessed One would not behave with the body in such a way that he could be censured by wise recluses and Brahmins." "Would the Blessed One, Venerable Ananda, behave with speech and behave with mind in such a way that he could be censured by wise recluses and Brahmins. No, great king, the Blessed One would not behave with speech or behave with the mind in such a way that he could be censured by wise recluses and Brahmins. And the king said, "It is wonderful, Venerable Sir, it is marvelous, for what we were unable to accomplish with the question has been accomplished by the Venerable Ananda with the answer to the question. We do not recognize anything of value in the praise and blame of others spoken by foolish, ignorant persons who speak without having investigated and evaluated. But we recognize as valuable the praise and blame of others spoken by wise, intelligent and sagacious persons who speak after having investigated and evaluated." Stop here for a moment. You can see from here that at the time of this sutta, King Pasenadi had known the Buddha not very long. So he did not yet have the strong faith in the Buddha. So he was asking the Buddha's disciple Ananda whether the Buddha could do anything wrong to body, speech and mind. And Venerable Ananda said no. According to the commentary, this sutta, at that time of this sutta, these external ascetics, they were jealous of the Buddha and the Buddha's disciples, so they wanted to harm the Buddha's reputation. So they convinced a female wanderer, Sundari, to every night go to the Jetavana monastery, and then at dawn the next morning to leave the monastery and let people see that she was leaving the monastery, so that people would suspect that she is having some affair with the Buddha or something. And after people had seen this several times, then these external ascetics, they murdered her and buried her near the Jetavana monastery. So when her body was discovered, the Buddha and the monks were under suspicion that they had an affair with her and killed her, maybe because she was pregnant or what. So that's why the king asked this question, whether the Buddha would do anything wrong. And then the king said, "Now, Venerable Ananda, what kind of bodily behavior is censured by wise recluses and Brahmins?" "Any bodily behavior that is unwholesome, great king." "Now, Venerable Ananda, what kind of bodily behavior is unwholesome?" Any bodily behavior that is blameworthy, great king." "Now, Venerable Ananda, what kind of bodily behavior is blameworthy?" "Any bodily behavior that brings affliction, great king." "Now, Venerable Ananda, what kind of bodily behavior brings affliction?" "Any bodily behavior that has painful results, great king." "Now, Venerable Ananda, what kind of bodily behavior has painful results?" "Any bodily behavior, great king, that leads to one's own affliction or to the affliction of others or to the affliction of both, and on account of which unwholesome states increase and wholesome states diminish. Such bodily behavior is censured by wise recluses and Brahmins, great king." "Now, Venerable Ananda, what kind of verbal behavior is censured by wise recluses and Brahmins?" "Any verbal behavior that is unwholesome." Similarly, he asked what type of verbal behavior is unwholesome. Then Venerable Ananda said, "That which is blameworthy, and that blameworthy behavior is that which brings affliction and affliction to the self or to others or to both." And similarly for mental behavior that is unwholesome. So these three karmas, bodily behavior, mental, verbal behavior and mental behavior that is unwholesome, are those types of behavior that leads to the affliction of others or to affliction of oneself or both. Now, Venerable Ananda, does the Blessed One praise only the abandoning of all unwholesome states? The Tathagata, great king, has abandoned all unwholesome states and he possesses wholesome states. Now, Venerable Ananda, what kind of bodily behavior is uncensured by wise recluses and Brahmins? Any bodily behavior that is wholesome, great king. Now, Venerable Ananda, what kind of bodily behavior is wholesome? Any bodily behavior that is blameless, great king. Now, Venerable Ananda, what kind of bodily behavior is blameless? Any bodily behavior that does not bring affliction, great king. Now, Venerable Ananda, what kind of bodily behavior does not bring affliction? Any bodily behavior that has pleasant results, great king. Now, Venerable Ananda, what kind of bodily behavior has pleasant results? Any bodily behavior, great king, that does not lead to one's affliction or to the affliction of others or to the affliction of both, and on account of which unwholesome states diminish and wholesome states increase. Such bodily behavior, great king, is uncensured by wise recluses and Brahmins. Similarly, for wholesome verbal behavior and wholesome mental behavior. So, wholesome body behavior, wholesome verbal behavior, and wholesome mental behavior does not lead to the affliction of oneself or others or both, and unwholesome states diminish and wholesome states increase. Unwholesome states are those states of mind that give you suffering, like restlessness, anger, greed, delusion, jealousy, and all that. And wholesome states are states of mind that give you happiness, like non-greed, non-anger, equanimity, etc. Now, Venerable Ananda, what kind? Now, Venerable Ananda, does the Blessed One praise only the undertaking of all wholesome states? The Tathagata, great king, has abandoned all unwholesome states and possesses wholesome states. And the king said, "It is wonderful, Venerable Sir, it is marvelous how well that has been expressed by the Venerable Ananda, and we are satisfied and pleased by what has been so well expressed by him. Venerable Sir, we are so satisfied and pleased with what has been so well expressed by the Venerable Ananda, that if the elephant treasure were allowed to him, we would give it to him. If the horse treasure were allowed to him, we would give it to him. If the boon of a village were allowed to him, we would give it to him. But we know, Venerable Sir, that these are not allowable for the Venerable Ananda. But there is this cloak of mine, Venerable Sir, which was sent to me packed in a royal umbrella case by King Ajatasattu of Magadha, 16 hands long and 8 hands wide. Let the Venerable Ananda accept it out of compassion." And Venerable Ananda said, "It is not necessary, great king. My triple robe is complete." Venerable Sir, this river Achiravati has been seen both by the Venerable Ananda and by ourselves when a great cloud has rained heavily on the mountains. Then this river Achiravati overflows both its banks. So too, Venerable Sir, the Venerable Ananda can make a triple robe for himself out of this cloak, and he can share out his old triple robe among his companions in the holy life. In this way, our offering will overflow. Venerable Sir, let the Venerable Ananda accept the cloak. The Venerable Ananda accepted the cloak. Then King Pasenadi of Kosala said, "And now, Venerable Sir, we depart. We are busy and have much to do. Now is the time, great king, to do as you think fit." Then King Pasenadi of Kosala, having delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Ananda's words, rose from his seat, and after paying homage to the Venerable Ananda, keeping him on his right, he departed. And soon after he had left, the Venerable Ananda went to the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him, he sat down at one side, related to him his entire conversation with King Pasenadi of Kosala, and presented the cloak to the Blessed One. Then the Blessed One addressed the monks. "It is a gain, monks, for King Pasenadi of Kosala. It is a great gain for King Pasenadi of Kosala that he has had the opportunity of seeing and paying respect to Ananda." That is what the Blessed One said. The monks were satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. It's the end of the sutta. So here the king Pasanadi, being new to the Dhamma, he did not understand so well what is meant by wholesome karma and unwholesome karma. So Venerable Ananda explained to him so clearly that he was so pleased. He said if Venerable Ananda could accept an elephant, he will offer him an elephant or a horse or even a village. But he knows these are not allowable. So he offered a piece of cloth to the Venerable Ananda. Very good quality cloth sent to him by King Ajatasattu. But Venerable Ananda, during the Buddha's time, the monks were only allowed one set of robes. One set of robes is called the triple robe. This is the upper robe, then the lower robe, the sabong, and then the double layer one, the sangati. Only three, one set is allowed. So he didn't want to accept the cloth. But this king pleaded with him a second time, so out of compassion, he accepted and then went to the Buddha and offered it to the Buddha. And then you see the Buddha praised this Venerable Ananda. He said it's a great gain for King Pasanadi to have had the opportunity of seeing and paying respect to Ananda. Ananda is one of the monks, even though at the time of the Buddha, he was only a Sotapanna, he had not attained Arahanthood. Yet the Buddha says it's difficult to find somebody with wisdom like Ananda. The Buddha had great regard for this Venerable Ananda. Okay. Now we come to Sutta number 89, Dhamma Chettiya Sutta, Monuments to the Dhamma. This is a very interesting sutta. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living in the Sakyan country at a town of the Sakyans named Medalumpa. Now on that occasion, King Pasanadi of Kosala had arrived at Nagaraka for some business or other. Then he addressed Diga Karayana. Diga Karayana is a general. Dear Karayana, have the state carriages prepared. Let us go to the pleasure garden to see a pleasing spot. Yes, sire, Diga Karayana replied. When the state carriages were prepared, he informed the king, Sire, the state carriages are ready for you. Now is the time to do as you think fit. Then King Pasanadi mounted a state carriage and accompanied by the other carriages, he drove out from Nagaraka with the full pomp of royalty and proceeded towards the park. He went thus as far as the road was passable for carriages and then dismounted from his carriage and entered the park on foot. As he walked and wandered in the park for exercise, King Pasanadi saw roots of trees that were lovely and inspiring, quiet and undisturbed by voices, with an atmosphere of seclusion, remote from people, favorable for retreat. The sight of these reminded him of the Blessed One thus. These roots of trees are lovely and inspiring, quiet and undisturbed by voices, with an atmosphere of seclusion, remote from people, favorable for retreat, like the places where we used to pay respect to the Blessed One, Arahant Sammasambuddha. Then he told Diga Karayana what he had thought and asked, where is he living now, the Blessed One, Arahant Sammasambuddha? Stop here for a moment. So here you can see that the Buddha used to live in very secluded places, remote from people, where it was very ideal for meditation. So he used to find the Buddha in such places. So when he saw this quiet, secluded park, he suddenly thought of the Buddha and wanted to see the Buddha. There is, sire, a town of the Sakyans named Medalumpa. The Blessed One, Arahant Sammasambuddha, is now living there. How far is it from Nagaraka to Medalumpa? It is not far, sire, 3 leagues or 3 yojanas, which is about 30 kilometers. There is still daylight enough to go there. Then, dear Karayana, have the state carriages prepared. Let us go and see the Blessed One, Arahant Sammasambuddha. Yes, sire, he replied. When the state carriages were prepared, he informed the king, Sire, the state carriages are ready for you. Now is the time to do as you think fit. Then King Pasenadi mounted a state carriage and, accompanied by the other carriages, set out from Nagaraka towards the Sakin town of Medalumpa. He arrived there while it was still daylight and proceeded towards the park. He went thus as far as the road was passable for carriages, and then he dismounted from his carriage and entered the park on foot. Now on that occasion, a number of monks were walking up and down in the open, and King Pasenadi went to them and asked, Venerable sirs, where is he living now, the Blessed One, Arahant Sammasambuddha? We want to see the Blessed One, Arahant Sammasambuddha. And the monk replied, That is his dwelling, great king, with the closed door. Go up to it quietly, without hurrying. Enter the porch, clear your throat, and tap on the panel. The Blessed One will open the door for you. King Pasenadi handed over his sword and turban to Diga Karayana then and there. Then Diga Karayana thought, So the king is going into secret session now, and I have to wait here alone. Without hurrying, King Pasenadi went quietly up to the dwelling with the closed door, entered the porch, cleared his throat, and tapped on the panel. The Blessed One opened the door. Stop here for a moment. You see, this king wanted to go and see the Buddha, and out of respect, he removed his sword and his turban. When you want to learn the Dhamma, when a lay person wants to learn the Dhamma from a monk, he must not be carrying his sword or wearing a turban. He has to uncover the head, since the monk has not covered the head. So out of respect, this king removed this emblem of kingship. Then King Pasenadi entered the dwelling. Prostrating himself with his head at the Blessed One's feet, he covered the Blessed One's feet with kisses and caressed them with his hands, pronouncing his name. I am King Pasenadi of Kosala, Venerable Sir. I am King Pasenadi of Kosala, Venerable Sir. And the Buddha said, But great king, what reason do you see for doing such supreme honor to this body and for showing such friendship? And he said, Venerable Sir, I infer according to Dhamma about the Blessed One. The Blessed One is fully enlightened. The Dhamma is well proclaimed by the Blessed One. The Sangha of the Blessed One's disciples is practicing the good way. Now, Venerable Sir, I see some recluses and Brahmins leading a limited holy life for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, or 40 years. And then on a later occasion, I see them well groomed and well anointed, with trimmed hair and beards, enjoying themselves provided and endowed with the 5 cords of sensual pleasure. But here I see monks leading the perfect and pure holy life, as long as life and breath last. Indeed, I do not see any other holy life elsewhere as perfect and pure as this. That is why, Venerable Sir, I infer according to Dhamma about the Blessed One. The Blessed One is fully enlightened. The Dhamma is well proclaimed by the Blessed One. The Sangha of the Blessed One's disciples is practicing the good way. Stop here for a moment. So, when the king went to the Buddha, he immediately prostrated himself, bowed down, and kissed the Buddha's feet. This is an Indian tradition. When they show respect, they like to touch the feet. And this king even went as far as to kiss the Buddha's feet. Then the Buddha said, Why do you show so much respect to this body? Then he said, because he infers, according to Dhamma, that the Buddha is fully enlightened, the Dhamma is well proclaimed, and the Sangha of monks are practicing the good way. He says in other religions, other external ascetics, he see them becoming a monk or ascetic for 10 years, 20, 30, even 40 years. And after even 40 years, they disrobe and go back to lay life, enjoy sensual pleasures. But here, he sees the monks wearing the robe until they die. That's why he says, he believes there is no other holy life as pure and perfect as the Buddhas. This is the first praise of the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. Again, Venerable Sir, kings quarrel with kings, nobles with nobles, Brahmins with Brahmins, householders with householders, mother quarrels with child, child with mother, father with child, child with father, brother quarrels with brother, brother with sister, sister with brother, friend with friend. But here I see monks living in concord with mutual appreciation, without disputing, blending like milk and water, viewing each other with kindly eyes. I do not see any other assembly elsewhere with such concord. This too, Venerable Sir, is why I infer according to Dhamma about the Blessed One. The Blessed One is fully enlightened. The Dhamma is well proclaimed by the Blessed One. The Sangha of the Blessed One's disciples is practicing the good way. Now stop here for a moment. So this is the second praise of the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. He says, you can see everywhere, even within families, family members quarrel. And then even among kings and nobles and Brahmins and householders, they quarrel. But here the monks live in harmony and concord, viewing each other with kindly eyes, having metta, a lot of metta for each other. That's why he believes that the Buddha is enlightened, the Dhamma is well proclaimed, and the Sangha is practicing the good way. Again, Venerable Sir, I have walked and wandered from park to park and from garden to garden. There I have seen some recluses and Brahmins who are lean, wretched, unsightly, jaundiced, with veins standing out on their limbs, such that people would not want to look at them again. I have thought, surely these venerable ones are leading the holy life in discontent, or they have done some evil deed and are concealing it. So lean and wretched are they, such that people would not want to look at them again. I went up to them and asked, why are you venerable ones so lean and wretched, unsightly, jaundiced, with veins standing out on the limbs, such that people would not want to look at you again? Their reply was, it is our family sickness, great king. But here I see monks smiling and cheerful, sincerely joyful, plainly delighting, their faculties fresh, living at ease, unruffled, subsisting on what others give, abiding with mind as aloof as the wild deers. I have thought, surely these venerable ones perceive successive states of lofty distinction in the Blessed One's dispensation, since they abide thus, smiling and cheerful, etc., with mind as aloof as the wild deers. This too, Venerable Sir, is why I infer according to Dhamma about the Blessed One. The Blessed One is fully enlightened. The Dhamma is well proclaimed by the Blessed One. The Sangha of the Blessed One's disciples is practicing the good way. I'll stop here for a moment. So this third praise, he says, whereas he sees other ascetics so lean and wretched, jaundice, that means looking all yellow, with the veins standing out, so ugly looking that you don't want to see them a second time. But here he sees the Buddha's disciples smiling and cheerful, so happy. That's why he says that he believes the Buddha is enlightened, etc. Again, Venerable Sir, being a head anointed noble king, I am able to have executed those who should be executed, to find those who should be fined, to exile those who should be exiled. Yet when I am sitting in council, they break in and interrupt me. Though I say, gentlemen, do not break in and interrupt me when I am sitting in council. Wait till the end of my speech. Still they break in and interrupt me. But here I see monks, while the Blessed One is teaching the Dhamma to an assembly of several hundred followers, and then there is not even the sound of a disciple of the Blessed One coughing or clearing his throat. Once the Blessed One was teaching the Dhamma to an assembly of several hundred followers, and there a disciple of his cleared his throat. Thereupon one of his companions in the holy life nudged him with his knee to indicate, be quiet, Venerable Sir, make no noise. The Blessed One, the teacher, is teaching us the Dhamma. I thought, it is wonderful, it is marvelous how an assembly can be so well disciplined without force or weapon. Indeed, I do not see any other assembly elsewhere so well disciplined. This too, Venerable Sir, is why I infer according to Dhamma about the Blessed One. The Blessed One is fully enlightened. The Dhamma is well proclaimed by the Blessed One. The Sangha of the Blessed One's disciples is practicing the good way. I stop here again for a moment. So this fourth praise, the king says he has, being a head anointed noble king, he has the power to execute anybody who should be executed, etc. Yet when he is speaking in council, they interrupt him. He asks them not to interrupt him, they still interrupt him. And they're not so respectful towards him. But he says when the Buddha is teaching the Dhamma, even to several hundred followers, not a sound can be heard, not even the clearing of the throat. And once one of the Buddha's monks cleared the throat, and then another monk used the knee to nudge him and told him to keep quiet. So he said he cannot see elsewhere people so disciplined as the Buddha's disciples. That's why he infers that the Buddha is enlightened, etc. Again, Venerable Sir, I have seen here certain learned nobles who were clever, knowledgeable about the doctrines of others, as sharp as hair-splitting marksmen. They wander about, as it were, demolishing the views of others with their sharp wits. When they hear the recluse Gotama will visit such and such a village or town, they formulate a question thus: we will go to the recluse Gotama and ask him this question. If he is asked like this, he will answer like this, and so we will refute his doctrine in this way. If he is asked like that, he will answer like that, and so we will refute his doctrine in that way. They hear the recluse Gotama has come to visit such and such a village or town. They go to the Blessed One, and the Blessed One instructs, urges, rouses, and encourages them with a talk on the Dhamma. After they have been instructed, urged, roused, and encouraged by the Blessed One with a talk on the Dhamma, they do not so much as ask him the question, so how should they refute his doctrine? In actual fact, they become his disciples. This too, Venerable Sir, is why I infer according to Dhamma about the Blessed One. The Blessed One is fully enlightened. The Dhamma is well proclaimed by the Blessed One. The Sangha of the Blessed One's disciples is practicing the good way. Again, Venerable Sir, I have seen certain learned Brahmins, learned householders, in the same way. They come to argue with the Buddha, but when the Buddha teaches them the Dhamma, they are so impressed by the Dhamma that they have no question to ask the Buddha, and they become the Buddha's disciples. So that's why he says he believes the Buddha is enlightened, etc. This is the fifth praise. Again, Venerable Sir, I have seen certain learned recluses, they come to argue with the Buddha, and after they are taught the Dhamma, they do not so much as ask him the question, so how should they refute his doctrine? In actual fact, they ask the Blessed One to allow them to go forth from the home life into homelessness, and he gives them the going forth. Not long after they have thus gone forth, dwelling alone, withdrawn, diligent, ardent, and resolute, by realizing for themselves with direct knowledge, they here and now enter upon and abide in the supreme goal of the holy life, for the sake of which clansmen rightly go forth from the home life into homelessness. They say thus: we were very nearly lost, we very nearly perished, for formerly we claimed that we were recluses, though we were not really recluses. We claimed that we were Brahmanas, holy men, though we were not really Brahmanas. We claimed that we were Arahants, though we were not really Arahants. But now we are recluses, now we are Brahmanas, now we are Arahants. This too, Venerable Sir, is why I infer according to Dhamma about the Blessed One. The Blessed One is fully enlightened. The Dhamma is well proclaimed by the Blessed One. The Sangha of the Blessed One's disciples is practicing the good way. Stop here for a moment. So this is the sixth praise. He says that these recluses, other external ascetics, they come to argue with the Buddha, but after hearing the Dhamma of the Buddha, they ask to become his disciple, and they go forth under him. And after some time practicing the holy life, they also become liberated, enlightened. Again, Venerable Sir, Isiddhartha and Purana, my two inspectors, eat my food and use my carriages. I provide them with a livelihood and bring them fame. Yet in spite of this, they are less respectful towards me than they are towards the Blessed One. Once, when I had gone out leading an army and was testing these inspectors, Isiddhartha and Purana, I happened to put up in very cramped quarters. Then these two inspectors, Isiddhartha and Purana, after spending much of the night in talk on the Dhamma, lay down with their heads in the direction where they had heard that the Blessed One was staying, and with their feet towards me. I thought, it is wonderful, it is marvelous. These two inspectors, Isiddhartha and Purana, eat my food and use my carriages. I provide them with a livelihood and bring them fame. Yet, in spite of this, they are less respectful towards me than they are towards the Blessed One. Surely these good people perceive successive stages of lofty distinction in the Blessed One's dispensation. This too, Venerable Sir, is why I infer according to Dhamma about the Blessed One. The Blessed One is fully enlightened. The Dhamma is well proclaimed by the Blessed One. The Sangha of the Blessed One's disciples is practicing the good way. Let's stop here for a moment. So this is the seventh praise. He says his inspectors, these two persons, I think they help the king to inspect certain places or to inspect his palace, etc. So they are very close to the king. Once they had to stay together in very cramped quarters, maybe in a tent. And these two persons, Isiddhartha and Purana, they are disciples, lay disciples of the Buddha. When they went to sleep, they had so much respect for the Buddha that their head was facing the direction where the Buddha was, and their feet towards the king. So the king was amazed how these two fellows they are so respectful to the Buddha. Again, Venerable Sir, the Blessed One is a noble, and I am a noble. The Blessed One is a Kosalan, and I am a Kosalan. The Blessed One is 80 years old, and I am 80 years old. Since that is so, I think it proper to do such supreme honor to the Blessed One and to show such friendship. Stop here for a moment. So this is the eighth praise. From here we can see that the Buddha was a citizen of Kosala. And this Kosala country had only one king, and that king is Pasenadi, not the Buddha's father. According to legend, the Buddha's father was a king, but in actual fact, the Buddha's father was just one of the many noble persons, just like we have a lot of Rajas and Tunkus in the country. So the Buddha's father was just one of the ordinary Rajas, not the king, but his father was wealthy. So at that time, King Pasenadi was 80 years old, and the Buddha was 80 years old. And now, Venerable Sir, we depart. We are busy and have much to do. Now is the time, great King, to do as you think fit. Then King Pasenadi of Kosala rose from his seat, and after paying homage to the Blessed One, keeping him on his right, he departed. Then soon after he had left, the Blessed One addressed the monks thus: Monks, before rising from his seat and departing, this King Pasenadi uttered monuments to the Dhamma. Learn the monuments to the Dhamma, monks. Master the monuments to the Dhamma. Remember the monuments to the Dhamma. The monuments to the Dhamma are beneficial, monks, and they belong to the fundamentals of the holy life. That is what the Blessed One said. The monks were satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. That's the end of the sutta. So you see, this sutta is called Dhamma Chettiya Sutta. Chettiya is the word for stupa. You can also say monument. So he's praising the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. But here the Buddha told his disciples he's praising the Dhamma. The Buddha is always humble. He doesn't say he's praising the Buddha. He says he's praising the Dhamma. The Buddha, the king uttered monuments to the Dhamma, praises so great, like monuments to the Dhamma. So it's an interesting sutta. You can see from here a few things. So I just recap these 8 things. First one, the Buddha this king says, whereas in other external ascetics, they even may have renounced 10, 20, 30 or 40 years, and then later they disrobe, go back to lay life. But in the Buddha's disciples, they wear the robe until they die. That's why he's so impressed. The second one, he says, it's natural for kings to quarrel with kings, nobles with nobles, Brahmins with Brahmins, and even within the family, people quarrel. But among the monks, they blend like milk and water, living in concord and harmony. That's why this is the second praise. The third one, he says, he has seen other external ascetics, thin and wretched, looking very miserable, because many of them they practice all these ascetic practices, torturing their body. So because they torture their body, they feel a lot of misery, a lot of suffering. But the Buddha's disciples don't do that. They meditate and attain the jhanas, and they attain great bliss. And that's why they feel so happy and always smiling. So that's the third praise. And the fourth one is, he says, he being a head anointed noble king, he is able to execute whoever should be executed, etc., and fine, etc. Yet when he's speaking in council, people still interrupt him. They don't have so much respect for him. Whereas the Buddha's disciples, when the Buddha is teaching the Dhamma, even to several hundred disciples, not a sound can be heard, not even the coughing or clearing the throat. That's the fourth. Then the fifth is talking about these nobles, learned Brahmins and learned householders who come to argue with the Buddha. They plan before they come that they will ask the Buddha this, and if the Buddha answers in such a way, they will demolish the Buddha's argument. When they come to the Buddha teaches them the Dhamma, and they're so impressed that instead of asking any question, they become the disciples of the Buddha. Then number 6, learned recluses, external sect recluses, similarly come to argue with the Buddha, but they are so impressed by the Buddha's teaching that they beg to become monks under the Buddha. And after becoming monks, they practice, and after a few years, they also attain liberation. And number 7, the king says, his 2 inspectors, Isiddhatha and Purana, even though the king provides them with the food, their livelihood, and their fame and all that, yet they are less respectful to the king than to the Buddha. At night they sleep with the head towards the Buddha and the feet towards the king, and the king is utterly amazed. Then number 8, the king says that he is a noble, the Buddha is also a noble. He is a Kosalan, the Buddha is also a Kosalan. He is 80 years old, the Buddha is also 80 years old. So these are the monuments to the Dhamma. Okay, we shall end here. Anything to discuss? Where is it stated that he is doubtful? No.
When he met what he met the Buddha, he was enlightened.
No, there's no King Pasenadi who doubted the Buddha's enlightenment. He's only asked certain questions like this, like, how would the Buddha do anything wrong? And then Ananda said no. Mm-hmm. No, there was a Brahmin who the first Brahmin, not a king. Mm. Not exactly that we should not have anybody who is dear to us. It's natural to love certain people. Only thing the Buddha's teaching is that you must know the danger. If you know the danger, then you know how to tarik brake pull the brakes don't go overboard If you go overboard, when something happens to them, you become mad like the Buddha stated so many cases, become mad. So in the Buddha's teachings, the Buddha said we should know danger in life. So we should practice the middle path. So whatever we do, we don't go overboard, don't go to the extremes.
But there's a story about a woman who had a dead child, and she Buddha lost her child, and Buddha advised her to look for a house that has got something to do with master seed. Is it been found in Nikaya?
This is the story of Kisa Gotami. Kisa Gotami, she was a young lady who had a child, probably her first child, and very young, the child died. So she, so heartbroken, she went out of her mind and was carrying the child around, asking for somebody to cure the child's sickness. But the child had already died. So already died a few days. She was still walking around with the dead corpse of the child, asking for cure until she came to the Buddha. Then the Buddha used a trick, asked her to go to some house where nobody had died, asked for this mustard or something, and she went from house to house, could not find a house where nobody died. So came back to the Buddha, and the Buddha taught her the Dhamma, that everybody has to die. No, there's nobody who does not die. Then make her understand the Dhamma, and then she, having understood the Dhamma, asked to go forth as a nun. So she later became a nun, and later became an Arahant. This is probably found in the Theri Gatha, verses of the Arahants, and also in the Dhammapada commentary, Dhammapada commentary, I think, but not in the Suttas, not in the four Nikayas, no, not in the four Nikayas. Okay, shall we end here?